She let out a breathless laugh as I kissed her, sparks raining down like blessings. Show off, she whispered against my lips. Guilty, I grinned before we took off running again. At the end of the line, our new car waited, gleaming beneath the glow of the sparklers. Tin cans rattled against the back bumper, and "Just Married" was scrawled across the windows in sloppy white paint. We turned back one last time to see everyone clapping and hollering, their sparklers waving high. I cupped Alice's face and kissed her once more, slower this time, savoring the sweetness. Ready to start forever, I asked. With you? She smiled, brushing her thumb along my cheek. Always. We slipped into the car, laughter still echoing behind us, and with one last wave, we pulled away into the night. We were supposed to head straight to the airport, but the farther we drove, the darker the sky became. The clouds thickened and rolled like an angry sea, swallowing up the moonlight. Dear, Alice's voice was soft, uncertain. She pressed her hand to the glass, staring at the horizon. Those don't look good. I reached over, brushing my fingers across hers. It's okay, baby. We just have to get to the airport, I reassured, trying to sound confident. The words had barely left my mouth when the sky opened up. Rain hammered the windshield in sheets, the wipers struggling to keep up. A deafening crack of lightning split the sky, the flash so bright it lit up the car interior for a second. Alice gasped, clutching my arm. Okay, yeah, I admitted, squinting through the storm. Let's stop for the night. I can't even see the road anymore. She let out a shaky laugh, half nerves, half relief. Our honeymoon adventure starts early, I guess. I chuckled, though my grip on the wheel was tighter than I wanted her to notice. Romantic, right? Nothing says newlyweds like pulling over in a monsoon. She smiled, but her eyes kept flicking nervously toward the dark blur of trees that lined the roadside. As long as you promise not to pick the creepiest place you can find, she said, trying to tease, but sounding uneasy. Baby, I'd never. I forced a grin. Only the finest roadside motel for Mrs. Alice. We drove for another few minutes, the storm still raging around us, when a soft glow appeared in the distance. At first, I thought it might just be a trick of the rain, but as we got closer, the lights sharpened into shape, warm and inviting against the dark night. There we go, I said, pointing. Alice leaned forward, squinting through the windshield. Oh, it's actually rather lovely. It was. The building that emerged from the shadows looked like something out of another time an old inn. Clearly aged, but still beautiful in its own way. White clapboard siding stretched upward, weather-worn but carefully maintained, its corners framed by ivy that crawled toward the eaves. A shingled roof sloped steeply, glistening with rain, and small diamond-paned windows glowed golden from the light inside. Lanterns hung on either side of a wide oak door, their flames flickering despite the storm, casting a soft halo that made the inn look almost magical. A painted wooden sign swung gently in the wind, creaking with every gust. The name. The Rosewood Inn was etched in fading script, surrounded by hand-painted roses that had long since chipped and weathered. Alice gave a little smile. It's kind of charming, like one of those places you'd see in a storybook. Storybook or ghost story, I teased, pulling into the gravel lot. She swatted my arm, though I caught the nervous flicker in her eyes. Don't start with that. I just want a hot shower and a bed. Then a hot shower and a bed you shall have, Mrs. Alice, I said with mock formality, turning off the car. The rain battered down on the roof above us, but inside the car it felt like a cocoon, just the two of us. We stepped inside, shaking the rain from our clothes, and the warmth hit us instantly. The lobby glowed in shades of gold and green, the colors somehow reminding me of Alice's eyes when they caught the light. The walls were paneled in dark, polished wood, lined with sconces that burned with soft amber bulbs, designed to look like candle flames. Heavy emerald drapes framed the tall windows, and a massive stone fireplace dominated one wall, its fire crackling cheerfully. The air smelled faintly of cedar and something floral, like old roses. At the far end, behind an oak counter carved with intricate patterns, an older gentleman appeared. His sudden presence made both of us startle, and Alice let out a small gasp before covering it with a laugh. Well, hello, he said warmly, his voice carrying a curious musical lilt, almost too cheerful for the storm raging outside. His silver hair was neatly combed back, though a stray curl kept slipping onto his forehead. His suit, while a little dated, was immaculately pressed, and a polished brass key dangled from a chain on his vest. His smile was kind, but his pale blue eyes seemed to linger just a little too long, like he was memorizing us. Sorry, I said, chuckling. You surprised us. Ah, yes, he replied with a grin, folding his hands on the counter. Travelers often say the same. Stormy nights, tired eyes. Makes me seem like I appear out of nowhere. Alice gave a polite smile, though she squeezed my hand tightly. The place is lovely, she said. Thank you, my dear, the man replied, his eyes twinkling. She's an old house, but she's got spirit. Been here longer than I have, in fact. He chuckled at his own words, then straightened. Now, let me get you a room. That'd be great, I said. We weren't planning on stopping, but the weather. Yes. The storm does have a way of keeping people here, he interrupted, nodding knowingly. But you needn't worry. The Rosewood Inn always takes care of her guests. Alice raised her brows at me, her lips twitching into the beginnings of a smirk. I could almost hear her thinking, did he just say the inn takes care of her guests? Do you have a room with a king bed? I asked, clearing my throat. Of course, he said, already turning to reach for a large brass key that hung from the wall. Only the finest for newlyweds. Alice blinked. Wait, how did you... He winked at her, sliding the key across the counter. The way you hold each other's hands. No mistaking that kind of bond. Alice laughed softly, shaking her head as she picked up the key. Well, he's observant. Or psychic, I muttered under my breath. The old man's smile widened as if he'd heard me, though he said nothing more. The man walked us down a long corridor lined with old oil paintings and rich emerald wallpaper, the golden sconces casting soft pools of light along the way. When we reached the door at the end of the hall, he handed me the brass key and gave us a knowing wink before strolling away, humming a tune to himself. Well, he was cheery, Alice said, plucking the key from my hand. With a mischievous grin, she slid it into the lock and gave the heavy door a firm shove. We both froze in the doorway. The room was astounding. A massive four-poster bed sat in the center, draped in a canopy of ivory silk that shimmered like moonlight. The sheets looked impossibly soft, layered with plush pillows and a quilt embroidered with roses. A floor-to-ceiling window stretched across the far wall, framed by emerald velvet curtains that glowed faintly in the candlelight. Beyond the glass, lightning flashed, illuminating the storm as though it had been painted just for us. To the side, a sunken marble tub was built into the floor, wide enough for two with golden taps shaped like swans. Rose petals floated lazily across its surface, already waiting in warm, perfumed water that carried the faint scent of jasmine. A small table nearby held a chilled bottle of champagne and 2 tall glasses, the condensation beating on the glass in the flickering light. The walls were adorned with gilt-framed mirrors and elegant sconces, the flames dancing like little stars. The air smelled faintly of roses and cedarwood, rich and comforting. Alice turned to me, her emerald eyes wide and glistening, lips curling into the beginnings of a smile. This is, she breathed almost too softly to hear. It's like something out of a dream, I laughed, stepping inside and pulling her hand gently. I guess we lucked out with the Rosewood Inn. She tilted her head, still half in awe, half in disbelief. Either that, or this is some kind of honeymoon spell. Then let's not break it, I murmured, wrapping my arms around her waist and pulling her close. Her smile widened as she pressed her forehead to mine. Not a chance. We set our things down, but Alice didn't move away. She just stood there, her eyes locked on me, watching, waiting. The way she looked at me like I was the only thing in the world sent a shiver straight through me. Slowly, she crossed the room, hips swaying with a kind of deliberate grace. When she reached me, her hand slid to the small of my back, her fingertips tracing upward along my spine, featherlight, teasing. I sucked in a breath, goosebumps rising as her touch lingered. I love you, she whispered, her voice husky as her fingers tangled in the hair at the back of my neck. She tugged just enough to tilt my head, making me look into her eyes. I love you more, I murmured back, my breathing quickening with every second. Her lips curled into a daring smile. No, you don't. Before I could protest, she gave me a playful shove, sending me back onto the massive bed. I landed against the silk sheets with a laugh cut short by the intensity in her gaze. She climbed onto the bed after me, slow and deliberate, her hands pressing into the mattress on either side of me, pinning me in place without even touching. In the flickering candlelight, with the storm roaring outside, she looked devastatingly beautiful wild curls framing her face, emerald eyes glowing with hunger, her lips parted as if she was savoring every breath I took. Alice's smile was wicked, but her touch was gentle as she leaned over me. Her curls spilled forward, brushing my face, tickling my skin as she hovered just above my lips. You drive me crazy, she whispered, her breath hot against my mouth. Good, I murmured, sliding my hands along her waist, feeling the smooth fabric of her dress beneath my fingers. That's exactly what I was going for. She let out a low laugh, the kind that was half tease, half need, and then her lips pressed against mine slow at first, deliberate, savoring every second. The kiss deepened and my pulse quickened, my heart pounding hard enough I was sure she could feel it beneath her hand pressed against my chest. When she finally pulled back, her emerald eyes shimmered in the candlelight, daring me, taunting me. Still think you love me more? I grinned, breathless. No doubt about it. She shook her head, brushing her lips along my jawline, down to my neck. You're wrong. Her voice was velvet, her words vibrating against my skin. I love you so much, it scares me. I tangled my fingers into her hair, pulling her closer, and she let out a soft sound that sent fire straight through me. Outside, thunder cracked, rattling the windows, but inside that room, it felt like the world had narrowed down to just us. Her weight against me, her lips, her laughter, her breath mingling with mine. The storm might have been raging, but at that moment it didn't matter. We were our own storm. As our lips pressed together, the moment was suddenly shattered by a sharp scream that tore through the silence of the inn. It was high, piercing, and distant, yet close enough to raise every hair on the back of my neck. Alice jerked back, eyes wide, her brow cocked. What the shit was that? My chest heaved, breath still ragged from the heat between us. I have no idea, I managed, my voice rough. Well, let's investigate, she said, already pushing herself up, her curls spilling forward as determination replaced the softness in her face. But instinct took over. I caught her wrist and gave a playful tug, pulling her back down on top of me, sending her tumbling right back into her formal position. Or, I murmured, cupping her face and guiding her lips closer again, we could. Continue. She smirked, though her gaze flicked toward the door, uneasy despite herself. You're impossible. I grinned, brushing my thumb over her cheekbone. That scream wasn't coming from this room, which means... I leaned closer until our noses almost touched. It's not my problem right now. Whatever, Alice said with a smirk, playfully pushing me away. She slid off the bed and padded across the room, her bare feet whispering against the polished floorboards. Reaching the bath, she lifted a plush white robe from its hook and slipped it on, the fabric wrapping around her like it was made for her. I watched, exasperated and a little amused, as she tugged her curls free from the collar, letting them spill in dark spirals over her shoulders. Babe, I said, drawing the word out, a mix of protest and warning. She cinched the robe at her waist, shooting me a glance over her shoulder. Well, are you coming? I groaned, running a hand over my face. You really want to chase strange screams in a stormy inn in the middle of the night? Alice arched a brow, the corner of her mouth tugging upward. What's the worst that could happen? I sat up, staring at her like she'd just cursed us both. Oh, I don't know, every horror movie ever? She laughed, shaking her head, and turned toward the door. That was enough. I swung my legs off the bed, slipping into my shoes with a resigned sigh. Fine, I said, standing and crossing the room to her side. But I'm not letting you go alone. Alice grinned, looping her arm through mine. Good. I wasn't planning on letting you out of my sight either. Her playful confidence made me smile, but as I glanced back at the flickering candlelight dancing across the canopy bed, a thought slid uneasily into my head. The room already felt different without her warmth in it. I stood up to grab a bathrobe of my own, when a pale, ghostly figure appeared in the corner of the room. Ah! We both screamed at the same time. Alice shrieked next, and I reflexively screamed back at her. The ghost let out a slightly quieter, almost embarrassed, ah! And we both screamed again, this time, not out of fear, but sheer confusion. Sorry to disturb your wedding night, y'all, the figure said, floating forward. Her voice was surprisingly cheerful, like she'd just popped in for a casual visit. Alice blinked, arms crossed, brow arched. All right, what the hell? Oh, I'm a ghost, the spirit replied, as if that explained everything. Well, I can see that, Alice said, dripping with sarcasm. Thanks for clarifying. I stifled a laugh, glancing at Alice. You're friendly? I asked, though it sounded ridiculous even as I said it. Friendly? Sure, if your idea of friendly is showing up uninvited in someone else's honeymoon suite, the ghost said, floating closer and gesturing vaguely at the luxurious bed and rose petals. Alice rolled her eyes, muttering under her breath, Of course. Our perfect honeymoon wouldn't be complete without a ghost guest. The ghost tilted her head as if genuinely curious. You're not scared? Not really, I said, smirking at Alice. You're kind of polite, I guess. Alice snorted, shaking her head. Yeah, polite in the same way a cat is polite before it knocks a vase off a shelf. The ghost gave a small, amused sigh. Well, I'll leave you lovebirds to it. Just try not to die before sunrise, okay? And with that, she vanished in a shimmer of light, leaving us blinking at each other in stunned silence. Well, that was ominous, I said, still catching my breath from the unexpected visit. Alice smirked, unbothered. Kinda cool, though, right? I shook my head, grinning. Only you would find a ghost visit cool. On that note, she gave me a cheeky grin and, with a dramatic flourish, ripped her robe off, letting it fall to the floor. God, I love this woman. Her eyes glittered as she tilted her head toward the massive tub, where rose petals floated on the warm water, the champagne bottle glinting beside it. Now that we know what the screaming was, shall we? I didn't even hesitate. I scooped her up effortlessly, holding her close against me. "We shall," I said, grinning as she laughed, the sound mingling with the faint rumble of the storm outside. She wiggled slightly in my arms, playful and daring. "Better be gentle, or I'll throw you in first." "Not a chance," I said, leaning down to kiss her, the tension between us crackling hotter than the lightning outside. "You're mine tonight." "And I'm yours," she whispered, tilting her head to meet my lips, eyes sparkling with mischief and desire. The world outside the storm, the ghost, even the mysterious inn seemed to fade away. There was only us, the tub, the champagne, and the heat of the moment. I carried Alice toward the massive tub, the warmth of her body pressed against mine, making my pulse spike. Her fingers traced my shoulders, nails teasing just enough to make me shiver. Her lips hovered near mine, eyes dark with desire. And when she whispered, "I've been waiting for this all day," I could barely keep my hands off her. My fingers traced the curve of her waist, pulling her impossibly close. The candlelight danced across her skin, soft and golden, highlighting every curve, every shadow. She pressed herself against me, and I could feel the rapid beat of her heart matching my own. Just as I leaned in to capture her lips again, a loud crash echoed from the far corner of the room, like a vase shattering. Both of us jumped apart, hearts still racing from anticipation, and a cold breeze swept through the open window. "Oh, my—" Alice gasped, scrambling to cover herself with the robe she'd tossed aside. A figure floated there, semi-transparent and grinning, a woman in an old-fashioned gown. "Excuse me," the ghost said cheerfully, hands on her hips. "I really don't mean to interrupt, but could you two keep it down? Some of us are trying to haunt in peace." I blinked. Alice's mouth fell open in shock, her playful blush now mixed with disbelief. "Well," I muttered, still holding back a laugh, "I guess the honeymoon just got haunted." The ghost gave us a dramatic flourish of her spectral arms. "Seriously, I've got haunting schedules, etiquette, and a reputation to maintain. And you," she pointed at Alice, "get a robe on, young lady. Respect the dead." Alice groaned, wrapping the robe around herself again, and I laughed, shaking my head. "Only us," I whispered, leaning close to her ear. "Only our honeymoon." The ghost floated to the other side of the room, muttering about manners and spectral gossip, leaving us wide-eyed, flushed, and still very aware of each other. "Do you mind?" Alice yelled, throwing her hands in the air, finally losing patience. The ghost floated there for a moment, her translucent gown shimmering. "Well then, young lady," she began, and just like that she dissipated into a swirl of mist, leaving only a faint echo of her voice. Alice spun toward me, eyes blazing with mischief and desire. "Let's make love before we're interrupted." "Again!" I laughed, breathless and grinning, pulling her close. "Agreed," I said, catching her lips in a fierce, urgent kiss, the tension and anticipation of the interrupted moment igniting every nerve. "Hi." The deep masculine voice came suddenly, right beside us. We both spun toward it, and I swear I saw Alice's eye twitch ever so slightly. Her hand tightened on my arm, a mix of caution and disbelief written across her face. "Pretty wife you got there," the voice said, low and casual. But there was something, lingering in the way he said it. "Ugh! Get!" Alice screamed, her tone sharp and commanding, like she was yelling at a particularly irritating dog. Her shriek made me giggle at first, but then I realized he wasn't just joking. He was, actually staring at my wife. Weirdly, uncomfortably so. I straightened, stepping slightly in front of Alice, my voice firm. "Okay. No, seriously. Leave!" The man's grin faltered slightly, the casualness in his stance wobbling under the weight of my glare. Alice squeezed my hand, leaning into me, and I felt the surge of protectiveness and desire mixing in a way that made my chest ache. And then, in an instant, the ghost lunged. Alice's hand was in his, and before I could even react, they both vanished into thin air, leaving nothing but a faint shimmer where they had stood. "What the hell?" I shouted, spinning around the room, heart hammering in my chest. "Alice!" My eyes darted to every shadow, every corner, every mirror reflecting the flickering candlelight, the bed, the tub, the floor, all empty. She was gone. "No. No, no, no," I muttered, pacing, my hands clenching into fists. "He took her. He actually took her." The storm outside rattled the windows, thunder booming like a warning. I could still feel her warmth, her presence, just gone. My pulse raced, every instinct screaming at me. I had to find her now. I tore through the halls of the inn, calling her name, my heart hammering. Nothing. Not a single soul, not even the innkeeper. Frustrated, I raced back into our room. Oh, ghost lady! I screamed, desperation cracking my voice. In a shimmer of pale light, she appeared, our very first ghost, the one who had interrupted us earlier. Hi, darling, she said, tilting her head, voice smooth and teasing. Where's that lovely wife of yours? Some mangy-ass ghost took her, I yelled, running a hand through my hair. The ghost rolled her eyes, clearly unimpressed. Does he happen to be? Tall, skinny, with an oddly shaped beard? I blinked. Yeah, that's actually dead on. Ugh, I hate that bitch, she yelled, throwing her spectral hands up in exaggerated frustration. Her eyes narrowed as if she were ready to haunt someone back into next week. I froze, half in shock, half in disbelief. You hate him? She groaned, floating closer. I do. Always making my afterlife miserable, stealing wives, ruining, haunting schedules. Honestly, the man has no respect for anyone. I rubbed my temples, trying to wrap my head around it. Okay, so you're going to help me, right? She smirked, a flash of amusement in her ethereal eyes. Now you bet. All right, darling, the ghost said, floating ahead. Follow me. But watch your step. This place has more corners than a haunted cheese factory. I swallowed hard, still catching my breath. Corners? Really? Now's not the time for jokes. Relax, she said, her eyes glinting mischievously. I only like jokes when people are in mortal peril. I rolled my eyes but followed anyway, racing down the hallways of the inn. Candlelight flickered wildly, casting shadows that danced like monsters on the walls. Somewhere in the distance, I thought I heard Alice's voice, muffled but unmistakable. There, the ghost hissed suddenly, pointing a spectral finger down a narrow staircase. A faint shimmer of movement appeared, a tall, skinny shape with an oddly shaped beard. He was holding Alice's hand, guiding her away from the main halls. I felt my stomach drop. No, that's him! That's the jerk! The ghost woman floated faster, swooping around him with a shriek. Hey, Beardy, drop the girl! The male ghost spun, startled, and for a second, Alice almost slipped from his grasp. I lunged forward, tackling her gently to the side, and she clung to me, laughing nervously. Gotcha, I yelled, spinning to face him. Ugh, this is my haunting turf, he snapped, floating in place, clearly not expecting a physical confrontation with a living person. Not tonight, buddy, the ghost woman called from behind me, arms crossed and a glare that could freeze a person solid. Back off before I turn your afterlife into a 3-star nightmare. Alice squeezed my arm, whispering, You always know how to make things dramatic, don't you? I smirked. Only when someone touches my wife. The male ghost hesitated, clearly annoyed and a little intimidated. The ghost woman hovered closer, muttering something under her breath, and suddenly he bolted, disappearing in a swirl of smoke, leaving Alice and me blinking in relief. Alice threw her arms around me, laughing and shaking her head. I swear, our honeymoon is insane. I kissed the top of her head, pulling her close. Only the two of us can survive this kind of chaos, together. The ghost woman floated beside us, smirking. Yeah, you're welcome. Don't forget it, darling. And with a dramatic flicker, she vanished, leaving just the three of us, minus one meddling, bearded ghost. I set Alice down gently, brushing a stray curl from her face. All right, I murmured, voice low, now that the jerky ghost is gone. We can finally relax. She smirked, looping her arms around my neck. You think so? I chuckled, guiding her toward the massive tub. Rose petals floated on the warm water, and the champagne chilled nearby, sparkled like tiny stars in the flickering candlelight. Alice leaned close, lips brushing my ear. After all that chaos, I think I deserve a little pampering. You? Pampering? I teased, smiling as I trailed my fingers along her arm. I thought you enjoyed scaring the living daylights out of me. She laughed softly, pressing herself closer. I do, but I also enjoy this, she whispered, glancing at the tub. I grinned, lifting her effortlessly into my arms and carrying her to the edge of the tub. And then let's not waste any time. Just as we were about to settle in, the candlelight flickered violently, and a distant wail echoed through the inn. Alice's eyes widened, and she groaned. Oh, are we seriously never going to get a quiet honeymoon? I laughed, nuzzling her neck. Apparently not, but hey, I don't mind a little chaos if it's with you. She leaned back against me, letting out a relaxed sigh as I poured the champagne into 2 glasses. Fine, she murmured. But if another ghost tries to steal my attention, I'm blaming you. Deal, I said, clinking my glass gently against hers. Now just us, finally.